I never liked Tuesdays. They always felt like the dead weight of the week, too far from the weekend to be hopeful, too late in the grind to feign enthusiasm. But that Tuesday started off deceptively normal. I was sipping my usual dark roast from the chipped mug with the binary code on it, my little inside joke. I just pushed a bug fix through for a client on the East Coast and was humming along to some obscure synthwave track when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but muscle memory won. I swiped, listened for a beat, then tapped the speaker button. Mr. Conrad, this is Angela from Clearwater Lending. I'm calling regarding your Highland Ridge mortgage. You've missed 3 consecutive payments. We urgently need to resolve your $833,000 balance before further legal action is considered. I froze mid-sip. The coffee scalded my tongue, but I didn't even flinch. The only word my brain latched onto was mortgage. A laugh scraped its way out of my throat, dry, confused, a little unhinged. What mortgage? I rent. Always have. My apartment, 3rd floor, 2-bedroom, slightly overpriced but close to work, was leased through an online platform that emails receipts like clockwork. Highland Ridge? That name didn't even register. I played the message again. Slower this time, as if clarity would suddenly bloom from repetition. But no, it was still there. Clear. Sharp. My name. My supposed property. My debt. I set the mug down so hard it left a ring on my desk. My fingers were already flying over the keyboard. Clearwater Lending, real company. Real phone number. Real consequences. My chest tightened. I checked my credit monitoring app. There it was. A mortgage account opened 6 months ago. My name. My social. My employer listed as self-employed consultant, which wasn't wrong, but I never said that to a lender. And the monthly payments? Enormous. All marked delinquent. I pulled up my bank statements. No automatic withdrawals. Nothing unusual except that a large transfer had been made out of our joint savings 3 months ago. $25,000. Labeled consultation fee. I never saw a dime of it. Camille. That name hit me like a punch to the ribs. My wife of 7 years. The woman I shared Netflix passwords, family holidays, and joint tax returns with. The woman who'd been helping a client stage a luxury home on Highland Ridge over the last few months. She'd even posted stories of it on her real estate account. Marble counters, panoramic views, a soaking tub that looked like it belonged in a spa brochure. I'd commented once, something dumb like, wow, stunning. Lucky client. She replied with a wink emoji. I stared at my phone again. Replayed the message. The words blurred. I was a software engineer, not some high-rolling property investor. My job paid well, sure, but I was careful, frugal, even. I still drove my own 9 Subaru. Camille always said I was too boring with money, too safe. I thought she meant it affectionately. I thought she meant it as balance to her wild, stylish flair. But this wasn't style. This was theft. And fraud. My hands moved almost mechanically now. I called Clearwater Lending back. The woman, Angela, answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful until I started asking questions. Yes, Mr. Conrad, this is the number we have on file, she said, her tone shifting to cautious professionalism. And yes, the mortgage was approved last fall. It was finalized with all the required documentation, W-2s, tax returns, pay stubs, identification. I cut in. I never applied for a mortgage. Ever. I don't own a house. I never gave anyone permission to do this. A pause. Then, I'm going to escalate this, sir. Can I place you on hold? I spent the next hour on that call. Transferred. Verified. Repeated. Explained. Again and again. They emailed me copies of the application packet. It arrived as a PDF bundle. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. My signature. It was perfect. The curve of the M, the flick in the D, even the little pressure drop I developed from years of signing quickly at the office. But it wasn't mine. I never put pen to those documents. The social security number was right. So was the driver's license. A scan of it sat right there in the file. My face. My ID. But the address listed was 18 Highland Ridge Drive. That's when the floor of my life gave out. Camille had mentioned Highland Ridge a few times, called it a hot pocket of modern architecture in an otherwise cookie-cutter suburb. Said it was the kind of listing that made her feel like she was actually doing something with her degree. But now I understood. It wasn't just business. It was personal. Intimate. She'd used me to build a life I didn't even know about. A fantasy funded by fraud. I pulled open our home filing cabinet, rummaged through the tax returns, old leases, insurance folders. Nothing jumped out immediately, but then I found it. A post-it note, folded and stuck to the bottom of the drawer. Called Tristan Rhee, final walkthrough. Tristan. Who the hell was Tristan? I tried to remember if she'd ever said that name aloud. Maybe in passing. A new client. A vendor. A contractor. But my memory was a blur of brushed-off questions and phone calls she always took in the car. Her smile had started changing lately. More for the camera, less for me. And her weekends were networking events I wasn't invited to. The pit in my stomach turned to acid. By noon, I was sitting at my desk, heart racing, staring at my own digital identity turned against me. My wife, my partner, had bought a house using my name, my documents, my entire life. And she never said a word. I looked out the window. Rain tapped against the glass like it was trying to warn me. The skyline of Tacoma sat quiet in the distance, gray and distant. Everything I thought I knew, everything I built with quiet effort and discipline, was being unraveled by someone who once swore to love me. And all it took was a single voicemail. I walked into the bank with the naive hope that the world still made sense. That this was just a clerical error, some unfortunate mix-up of records and names that could be corrected with a few scanned IDs and a furrowed brow from someone behind a desk. I told myself not to overreact. But deep down, my body already knew. My palms were sweating before I even pulled the glass door open. The woman at the front desk smiled politely as I stepped up. "How can I help you, sir?" "My name is Miles Conrad," I said, holding out my driver's license like a badge. "I got a call from Clearwater Lending about a mortgage I supposedly have. I'm here to clear it up." Her eyes flicked to my ID, then to her screen. One moment. She clicked through something silently, then blinked. "Yes, Highland Ridge. Yeah, that's the one." She gestured for me to sit and told me someone from the mortgage department would be out shortly. I sat on the edge of the chair, legs bouncing, trying not to spiral. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. Camille wouldn't do something like this. Sure, she was impulsive, dramatic, even. But this? 10 minutes later, a man in a slate gray suit appeared, smiling too tightly. "Mr. Conrad, I'm Roger Mathis. If you'll follow me?" I did. His office smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. I expected him to open with small talk, but instead, he pulled a manila folder from a drawer and slid it toward me like it was a chess move. "This is the original application packet for the Highland Ridge property. Approved 4 months ago. Would you like to verify your information?" He opened it. I sat forward, heart knocking on my ribs like a warning bell. And there it was again, my name at the top. My social security number. My job title. My salary. Every page had me on it. And the signature? My hand twitched involuntarily as I stared at it. It was mine. Except it wasn't. Whoever did this didn't just forge my name. They studied it. I could almost see Camille's hand in the precision, the practiced curve of the strokes. I remembered watching her fake my signature once on a birthday card to save time. I'd laughed then. My stomach churned now. "None of this is real," I said hoarsely. "I didn't sign any of this." Roger looked uncertain, but he kept his voice neutral. "Mr. Conrad, this loan was approved using documents submitted under your name. We had W-2s, tax returns, utility bills. And all of them passed verification." I snapped my head toward him. "What address was listed?" He checked the sheet. "Well, initially your current one. But all communication was shifted to Highland Ridge post-approval. That's not uncommon." I stopped listening. My thoughts funneled into a single realization. Camille had intercepted everything. She'd created a false trail. And no one had questioned it because the paperwork was pristine. Then he flipped the last page. The property title. Camille Michelle Conrad, listed as a co-buyer. And another name just beneath hers, Tristan Hale. I stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked enough times. Tristan Hale. Not a client. Not a contractor. Not a name I could explain away. She hadn't just bought a house behind my back. She was planning to live in it, with someone else. She wasn't just fantasizing about a new life. She was constructing it, room by room, with fake documents and a real man who wasn't me. I looked up slowly, my throat so dry it ached. "Do you have a photo ID on file?" "For him." Roger hesitated. "We do, but it's part of a private application. Unless this becomes a legal matter, it's going to become a legal matter," I said. I stood. My legs were stiff, barely working. "Thank you for your time." The walk back to the car felt surreal. The street looked too crisp, the clouds too still. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. My wife. My wife had used me like a stepping stone, a resource, a temporary life. I thought about her lately, how she'd pulled away, not in dramatic fights but in small, quiet shifts. She used to tell me everything. Lately, she'd grown secretive. Her phone was always upside down on the table. She worked more evenings. Her social media presence had exploded, videos of staged homes, filtered selfies, aesthetic lattes. And Highland Ridge. Always Highland Ridge. She used to ask my opinion on backsplash tile and flooring options. Lately, she didn't ask me anything at all. A few weeks ago, she said, if I ever had the chance to build my dream life, I wouldn't wait. I thought she meant career goals. I nodded like a supportive husband. I didn't realize she meant a future without me. Back home, I sat at our kitchen island, staring at the marble countertops she insisted on upgrading last year. Her aesthetic. Her dream. I remembered how she giggled at the showroom, said, "These look like something from a Vogue house tour." I just wrote the check. The walls around me felt like props in someone else's play. Everything was curated for a version of our life she could post about. Not live in. Just decorate. I pulled out my laptop. I searched Tristan Hale. There were a few profiles, one in Bellevue, one in LA. The Bellevue one matched. Construction consultant. Tall, polished, annoyingly handsome. His LinkedIn bio mentioned partnerships with several luxury real estate firms, including Camille's. He smiled in his profile photo like he already knew the ending of the story I hadn't even begun to read. I closed the laptop and rubbed my temples. This wasn't about heartbreak, not yet. Right now, it was about theft, betrayal, a mortgage, a goddamn mortgage I never signed for, and a wife who was already halfway out the door, packing her new life in boxes and velvet throw pillows. I got up slowly and walked toward our shared office. Her desk was pristine, minimalist, staged like everything else. But the bottom drawer was locked. I found the spare key taped under the bookshelf. She didn't even try that hard to hide it. Inside the drawer were folders, contracts, financials, and a receipt for new furniture delivered to Highland Ridge just last week. Billed under the co-owners, Camille Conrad and Tristan Hale. Her dream. My name. My nightmare. Camille always dreamed big. I used to think it was inspiring. She talked about vision boards and manifesting, about crystal energy and luxury real estate as if she were building a cathedral with her bare hands. In the early years, I admired her fire. She was kinetic, bold, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it feel like a showroom. I liked that she thought we could have more, do more. But I didn't know more meant without me. She once told me marble was a symbol of rebirth. It holds history, she said, running her fingers along a countertop sample like it was sacred. But it's also clean, regal, like nothing can touch it. She posted a reel about that idea once, slow-motion shots of white veined slabs, and her voiceover talking about transformation. People loved it. Hearts and shares and hashtags I never understood. I thought she was branding herself. I didn't know she was branding our divorce. The Highland Ridge house had marble floors in the entryway. Imported, if the invoice I found in her drawer was accurate. She paid for them with an account I didn't know we had. A business account, listed under Camille Conrad Holdings. I looked at the receipts for chandeliers, velvet chairs, oversized gold-accented mirrors. She was designing a life fit for Instagram. For her next chapter. For someone else. I spent that night on the couch. Not because we'd fought, she wasn't even home, but because I couldn't sleep next to someone who had weaponized trust. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many lies had lived in the spaces between our conversations. Her late-night strategy calls. Her weekends away with the girls. Even the skincare boxes that arrived monthly. Were they real purchases or just covers for invoices? When she came in just after midnight, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize and wine I hadn't bought, she tiptoed like I'd be asleep. I pretended to be. I watched her silhouette move across the living room, the quiet jingle of her keys on the counter. She stood for a long time, looking at something on her phone, her face illuminated with a softness that didn't belong to me anymore. She didn't even glance toward the couch. Eventually, she disappeared into the bedroom. The next morning, she was all casual smiles. "You didn't come to bed," she said, buttering toast like she hadn't shattered the ground beneath me. "You working on that late deployment?" I just nodded. She kissed my cheek and called me babe, in that sing-song voice she used when she wanted something or when she knew she'd done something unforgivable. That was the thing about Camille. She could lie with her whole body and still seem sincere. I think she convinced herself it wasn't a lie if it was for the greater good, if it led to a better life. But better for who? I opened my laptop and started digging. Not just the invoices and account balances. I went further. Her brokerage license, her listings, her business website, her calendar, which I still had access to through a shared Gmail we set up for syncing schedules. There were whole appointments marked simply as Highland, sometimes twice a day. Some overlapped with times she told me she was meeting Naomi or running errands. And the weirdest thing? Most of those entries were scheduled months before the mortgage had even been approved. She didn't stumble into this deception. She built it brick by brick. There was a video she posted 3 weeks ago. Her final reveal, walkthrough of the Highland Ridge house. "This is where dreams begin," she said into the camera, spinning slowly in the foyer. A space where love, elegance, and vision come together. Love? I paused the video. Behind her, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a man's blazer draped casually over the arm of a cream couch. It wasn't mine. Camille had cropped him out, but he was there, like a ghost. That night, I asked her, point blank, "Who's Tristan Hale?" She barely blinked. A pause, like she was deciding which version of herself to wear in response. "He's a design consultant. We worked together on staging." I watched her closely. "Is he more than that?" She sipped her wine, smiled tightly. "You're being dramatic." I didn't push. Not then. Because I knew if I showed my hand too soon, she'd bury the rest of the evidence. And I wasn't ready for that. I needed the full picture. I needed to know how deep this marble floor went. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I searched her closet. Not for lingerie or perfume. For receipts. For slips. For paper trails. And I found it in a red folder tucked behind a shoe box labeled Winter Scarves. Inside, copies of the mortgage agreement. Her real signature beside my forged one. A hand-drawn floor plan with notes like T's side table and wine fridge, his idea. Sticky notes with color swatches labeled Tristan's pick. She wasn't just building a house. She was building a home. With him. A betrayal of this magnitude doesn't just hurt. It hollows you. It reaches into places you didn't know were vulnerable. She didn't just steal my name, my credit, my finances. She stole time. She stole the version of us I believed in. I took photos of everything. Every note, every signature, every file. I uploaded it all to a private folder on my encrypted drive. Then I sat back and stared at the fireplace she insisted we install last Christmas. I remembered us picking out stockings, arguing playfully over garland. Was that even real? Or was she already dreaming of a different mantle? I didn't cry. Not then. That came later. Right then, I felt something deeper. A quiet rage. The kind that doesn't shout or break things. The kind that sharpens. And beneath it all, a single, echoing truth. Camille had turned our marriage into a business strategy. And she executed it flawlessly, until she underestimated the man who signed the bills. Or the one she thought would never notice the cracks beneath the marble floors. I never thought I'd find myself sitting across from a detective talking about my wife like she was a suspect. Yet there I was, in a stuffy little office on the 3rd floor of the Tacoma Police Department, the smell of old paper and burnt coffee in the air, trying to make sense of how the woman I married had turned my life into a forged document. Detective Shauna Ramirez didn't flinch when I laid it all out. The voicemail, the fake mortgage, the man named Tristan Hale, the mountain of paperwork in Camille's handwriting. Her expression didn't shift, not even when I handed her the red folder I'd found in Camille's closet. I'd half expected skepticism, but Ramirez nodded with a calm, seasoned precision. "It's more common than you think," she said, flipping through the pages. "Most people think identity theft comes from strangers. But the majority of cases start at home. Spouses, siblings, children, people with access." I stared at her. But how? She got everything right. My signature, my tax returns, even my driver's license. Ramirez set the folder down. Because she had time. And proximity. And trust. That word made me want to laugh. Trust. The thing Camille used like a scalpel. The thing I thought we had until the entire structure of our marriage collapsed under it. Ramirez explained how financial identity theft like this typically played out. Small changes, account rerouting, document scans lifted from shared files. She said Camille didn't need to hack anything. She had the passwords, the tax files, The access. She didn't just forge your name, Ramirez continued. She built a whole alternate financial profile around it. She kept it close to the truth, just enough to pass checks. That's the trick. The lies ride the coattails of what's real. I felt nauseous. She could face multiple felony charges, Ramirez added calmly. Wire fraud, mortgage fraud, identity theft. But it depends on what you want to do. What I wanted to do. I wanted to rip the whole illusion down. I wanted Camille to know I saw it all now. The performative marriage, the smiles over takeout, the compliments she handed out like coupons. I wanted to stop feeling like a ghost in my own life. But what I said was, what's the next step? Ramirez leaned back and told me how to file an official complaint. We went over affidavits, notarized statements, and documentation I'd need to provide to confirm I hadn't consented to the mortgage. She noted the IP addresses tied to the mortgage submission. The lender had provided access logs. Most of them pointed to our home internet. Camille didn't just forge my name. She forged our entire shared space. Later that evening, I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at the room we'd built together. The minimalist nightstands, the matching lamps, the linen sheets she swore by. And now, I couldn't look at any of it without seeing evidence. I started logging into everything: bank accounts, cloud drives, even old email folders. I combed through data like a forensic analyst, determined to find it all. And I did. Hidden in a Camille Projects folder on our Google Drive, buried inside subfolders of real estate marketing materials, I found a PDF labeled HR_mortgage_final. Inside, scans of my tax forms, pay stubs, even a color-corrected scan of my driver's license. I didn't even know she had access to those. But of course she did. I'd filed them from this very desk. She must have watched me, waiting for the right moment. And then she used them. There were templates too, digital signature tools, font overlays to match my handwriting, email drafts she sent to the lender pretending to be me. She used a Gmail address one character off from mine, Moleskine instead of Miles Conrad. It was brilliant in its subtlety. Easy to miss. Impossible to catch unless you were looking closely. And she counted on me never looking. I remember staring at the screen, breath shallow, a dull roar in my ears. I didn't want to be the guy who got played. I didn't want to be the man people whispered about. Didn't he know? How could he not see it? But I hadn't. Because I loved her. Because she was the kind of liar who smiled through her crimes. I documented everything. Screen recorded the folders. Backed up copies on an external drive. Printed off what I needed for Ramirez. I wasn't just building a case. I was building a lifeline. The next morning, I drove back to the precinct and handed over the drive. Ramirez slid it into her laptop without ceremony, eyes scanning the file names. She's been planning this a while, she murmured. Yeah, I said. I know that now. It was eerie how calm I felt. Not numb, just clear. It was like I'd been under anesthetic for months and the feeling in my limbs was finally returning. My marriage wasn't just over, it had been weaponized. And I was no longer going to be the soft target. Ramirez filed the preliminary report and assured me an investigation would begin. There'd be subpoenas for Camille's accounts, IP logs, possibly a warrant if it escalated. You need to prepare yourself, she said. If she's smart, and she clearly is, she may try to gaslight you. Minimize. Apologize. Use your history against you. I nodded slowly. She already has. By the time I got home, the house felt different. The walls too smooth. The silence too still. I saw everything now. Every lie folded into a shopping bag. Every excuse wrapped in throw pillows and sponsored Instagram posts. Camille hadn't just betrayed me. She'd replaced me in her vision of the future. I was just the foundation beneath the life she wanted to build, with someone else. That night, as she scrolled through her phone across the couch from me, I watched her like I was watching a stranger. She laughed at something on the screen. Probably a comment. Maybe a DM from Tristan. I didn't ask. I just stared at the hand holding the phone, the nails painted white, the wedding ring still on her finger like it meant something. And I thought, you forged everything. Even this. Camille insisted we host family dinner that week like nothing had happened. Like my world hadn't cracked open. Like I hadn't sat in a detective's office 3 days earlier filing an official report against my own wife for identity theft and fraud. She moved through the house as if the lies she'd built weren't breathing through the walls, polishing glasses, fluffing pillows, burning that overpriced candle she always saved for company. It was lavender and sage and something else I couldn't name, but the scent made my stomach turn now. I stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching her drizzle balsamic glaze over a platter of caprese skewers like we were on some cooking show. She caught my eye and smiled too brightly. "Can you set the table, babe?" I didn't move. Her expression didn't falter, but I saw the flicker of irritation behind her eyes. "Please," she added, still sweet, still pretending. I walked over, grabbed the stack of plates, and started placing them on the dining table like muscle memory was doing the work. Forks, knives, wine glasses. It all felt like a theater set. Not one piece of it was real anymore. I had the folder tucked in a messenger bag upstairs, zipped up, waiting. That manila shell that held every carefully curated lie she had written in my name. Every forged signature. Every hope she'd stapled to a future with another man. Naomi arrived first, loud as ever, swinging the front door open without knocking like she lived there. "I brought dessert," she sang, holding up a bakery box. "And gossip. Oh my God, Camille, you should have seen what Tristan posted this morning." Camille practically lunged at her. "Naomi," she hissed under her breath, pulling her toward the kitchen. "Not now." Naomi's eyes widened. "What?" "It's not a secret." My jaw locked. I kept placing cutlery, slower now. Camille's parents followed not long after, dressed like they were attending a garden brunch even though it was after dark. Her father gave me a nod, stiff, unsure. Her mother air-kissed Camille's cheek and glanced around the house with a satisfied sigh. "You really should be hosting more often. This place looks like a magazine spread." I nearly laughed. Of course it did. Camille had been staging her exit for months. We all sat down. Camille poured the wine. She made her usual toast, some half-charming, half-self-congratulatory line about family and growth and how we rise by lifting others. I looked directly at her as she said it. She never met my eyes. Dinner unfolded like a bad play. Naomi dominated the conversation, her voice slicing through the room. "So, Highland Ridge," she said with a mischievous grin. "I saw the walkthrough video. You finally convinced them to buy the mirror set." Camille smiled without smiling. And when's Tristan moving in full-time?" Naomi teased, raising a glass. "I swear, that man belongs in that house." Everyone froze. My hand didn't shake, but I let my fork rest on the edge of my plate. Camille's mother coughed politely, clearly uncomfortable. Her father stared into his wine like it held a portal. Naomi giggled, trying to shrug it off. "What? I mean, come on. They make sense." Camille shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. "Naomi, that's enough." I dabbed my mouth with a napkin. "Slow. Calm." Then I stood. "I have something to share," I said. The table quieted instantly. I left the room and returned with the folder in hand. Camille saw it and immediately went pale. I took my seat again, laid it gently in the center of the table, and slid it across to her. "This," I said, "is a police report, filed 3 days ago, for identity theft and mortgage fraud, against my wife." No one moved. Camille stared at the folder like it might catch fire. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Miles, what is this?" Camille didn't speak. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. "Everything's in there," I continued. "Bank statements, forged documents, the mortgage application, email trails, even IP addresses, all traced back to this house, to Camille." Naomi let out a strangled laugh. "Wait, are you serious right now?" I turned to her. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Camille finally found her voice. "You don't understand what you're doing." "No," I cut in. "You didn't understand what you were doing. You used my name, my credit, my income. You bought a house I've never seen and planned a life I was never meant to be part of. With him." I didn't say Tristan's name. I didn't have to. Her face twisted. First into denial, then panic, then anger. "I was building something for us. For our future." "Our future," I said, steady. "Does that include the furniture receipt co-signed by Tristan Hale? The tea's side table note in your floor plan? Or the wine fridge labeled as his idea?" Camille's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Naomi stood. "Okay, this is out of hand." "No," Camille's father said quietly. "It's not." He looked at her for a long moment. "Is it true?" Camille swallowed hard. It's complicated. I didn't think it would get this far, but it did," I said. "And you kept going. You watched me pay bills while you played house with another man using my name." Camille's mother was crying now. Naomi sat back down slowly. Her face had gone pale. I looked at each of them. I don't need your pity. I didn't do this to create a scene. I did it because it's my life. And she stole it. Camille slammed her glass down. You weren't even using your credit. You've been sitting on savings like a squirrel in winter while I've tried to make something of us. I raised an eyebrow. So your answer was to become someone else entirely? I built that house for us, she insisted, voice shaking. You just weren't ready for it. And what exactly was I supposed to do when Tristan moved in? Sleep in the guest room. She went silent. Her father stood. We need to go. Her mother didn't speak. She simply grabbed her purse and headed for the door, shoulders trembling. Naomi followed, unusually quiet. But Camille stayed seated, jaw clenched, chest rising and falling like she might explode. I sat back in my chair and took a sip of wine. It tasted better than it ever had. Camille didn't cry when they left. She didn't chase after her parents or Naomi, didn't plead or panic like I half expected her to. She just sat there across the table from me, staring at the wine glass like it held the answer to a test she hadn't studied for. Her face was frozen, eyes glassy but dry, the mask cracking but not yet falling. She didn't speak. I didn't either. We just sat in the tension she built, the wreckage humming around us like static. Eventually, she stood and carried her plate to the sink. She washed it like nothing had happened, each scrape and rinse mechanical. She even wiped the counter, folded the dish rag neatly. The silence between us wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. I leaned back in my chair. You're not going to apologize? She turned, slowly. For what? That response almost made me laugh. Almost. For forging my signature. For lying. For building a house with another man while sleeping in mine. She crossed her arms, leaning against the kitchen island. I didn't build that house with another man. I built it for me. But you used my name. Because I had to. Her voice cracked, just a bit. You wouldn't have done it. You'd still be renting that shoebox apartment if I hadn't pushed us. You're too safe, too comfortable. I wanted more. Then you should have used your name. Your credit. Your income. Not mine. She scoffed. Don't act like I didn't contribute. I've carried us, too. My commissions, my leads. This family runs because I make things happen. I stood then. Not fast, not loud. Just stood. No, Camille. This family ran on trust. And you bled it dry. Her face flickered again. Denial, anger, and something else I couldn't name. She grabbed a towel and dried the same spot on the counter again and again. I didn't want it to end like this, she finally whispered. You didn't want to get caught, I said. She turned back to me, voice rising. You think I was happy? That I enjoyed sneaking around, hiding documents? Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend every day like things are fine when I've been drowning in pressure? Pressure you created, I said, stepping closer. You wanted the lifestyle. The optics. The perfect posts, the designer throw pillows, the fake open houses. You were performing for strangers while I was paying the gas bill. She shook her head. You don't get it. No, Camille. I do get it. I just finally stopped pretending not to. She looked like she might break, like the glass in her hand might go flying across the room. Instead, she clutched it harder. You were never enough. The words landed sharper than anything she'd ever said. Sharper than the lies. Sharper than Tristan's name on the deed. I nodded. Now we're telling the truth. She looked startled, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. But it was already in the air, already twisting the knife. You were so boring, Miles, she said, voice lower now, like confession. Always budgeting. Always calculating. Always, maybe next year. I couldn't breathe. And Tristan gave you air? He gave me something. Attention. Excitement. He believed in my vision. I sat back down slowly. So you believed in him enough to build a life using my name? Camille dropped the towel, her hands shaking now. You don't understand how alone I felt. I laughed. Bitter and low. Alone? You had a husband who showed up, who supported your business, who paid the rent so you could stage homes for free, who never once questioned where the extra money went, or why you needed another client meeting that ended at 2 a.m. She winced. Tristan, I said, testing the name in my mouth, did he know you were using my identity? She looked away. Because if he did, I said, leaning forward, he's complicit. And I already turned in the invoices. The co-signed receipts. His name's on the delivery logs. She swallowed hard. I didn't tell him everything. I nodded. You didn't have to. But now he'll find out. Along with everyone else. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't have to ruin me. You already ruined yourself. She came closer then, slowly, like I was something fragile. She crouched next to my chair, resting her hands on my knees like we were still partners. Like anything could be salvaged. Miles, she said gently, you love me. I did. I made a mistake. No. You made a choice. Over and over again. And you didn't stop until you were sitting across from a folder full of felony charges. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. I let them fall. Let her feel what it was like to cry alone. You could have talked to me, I said, my voice low now. You could have said you weren't happy, that you wanted more. But instead, you built a second life and left me out of it. She stood slowly, like she knew the performance was over. The real audience had seen it all now. Her parents, Naomi, and me. As she walked away, I said one last thing. By the way, the furniture? Already subpoenaed. Tristan's going to have to answer for that too. She paused at the door, spine stiff. He already blocked me. I didn't smile, but I didn't hide the satisfaction in my voice either. Of course he did. She left the room. I sat alone in the silence she used to fill with chatter and perfume and curated playlists. The wineglass still sat at her place. Her lipstick mark had faded. I poured the last of the bottle into mine. One sip. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd gambled on the idea that I would never push back, that I would stay quiet, that I'd keep pretending for the sake of appearances. But I wasn't her audience anymore. I wasn't her foundation. And the mask? It had finally slipped. What stood before me wasn't a visionary or a dreamer. It was a fraud. And now the world would know it, too. 2 days after the dinner, Camille was arrested. It happened early in the morning, just as the sun was pushing through the blinds in my bedroom. I hadn't slept much. I didn't dream, not really. Just closed my eyes and waited for morning like I was holding my breath through a tunnel. But at 6:17 a.m., the knock on the door came, and not mine, hers. The one at the new Highland Ridge address. The one where she thought she could hide everything. I'd already given the police her access logs, the furniture invoices, the mortgage approval paperwork, every detail cross-referenced and highlighted in red. Detective Ramirez had been thorough. And when she told me it would move fast, she wasn't exaggerating. Camille was served with a warrant for identity theft, wire fraud, and mortgage fraud totaling over $800,000 in damages. My name was on every form. Her hands on every lie. I didn't watch it happen in person. I didn't need to. I got a text from Ramirez. She's in custody. It's done. But by noon, the internet had done what it always does. A headline popped up on my phone while I was halfway through a lukewarm sandwich at my desk. Real estate agent arrested for fraud after allegedly using husband's identity to buy home for secret partner. They used a photo of her in a red blazer, laughing on a front porch, the kind of photo you'd see on a business card. I stared at it for a long time. She looked successful, confident, beautiful, like someone who had it all figured out, like someone who would never fall. And yet here we were. My inbox exploded before I even finished the article. Friends, former coworkers, clients who remembered her from networking mixers, even strangers. Some sent sympathy, others sent links. One old friend from college messaged, "Dude, this can't be your Camille, right?" I didn't reply. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. But then she posted the video. Camille, from jail, in an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back, no makeup. The video started with her crying, big, messy tears that stained her cheeks and cracked her voice in all the right places. I knew her performance style. I'd seen her rehearse pitches in front of the mirror. This wasn't grief. This was theater. I didn't know what else to do, she said, choking on emotion. I felt so abandoned. Miles didn't listen. He stopped seeing me. She blamed mental stress, pressure, depression. She used the word trap 3 times. Not once did she mention the forged documents. Not once did she admit she built a future with another man. And the final blow? I never stopped loving my husband. I just didn't know how to ask for help. I watched it in silence. The video had over 30,000 views in 2 hours. The comment section split like a cracked sidewalk. One half was furious. She stole his identity. That's not love. Typical manipulator move. Blame the victim. You don't accidentally buy a mansion and move your boyfriend in. The other half defended her. People do crazy things when they're in pain. Let her explain. We don't know the full story. Mental illness is real. Don't cancel her. That one hit a nerve. I wasn't canceling her. I was protecting myself. From further damage. From spin. From the rewriting of a story I'd lived. Through alone while she rehearsed a version she thought the world would find easier to swallow. What bothered me most wasn't that she was trying to save face. It was that she was still using me to do it. My name, my silence, my restraint. She was banking on me not telling the whole truth. On me being the reasonable one, the quiet one. Again. But I didn't stay quiet. I didn't post a rant. I didn't record a counter video. I simply emailed a local journalist the full police report. I attached the digital folder, screenshots of forged forms, co-signed delivery slips, text messages between Camille and her staging assistant referencing keeping Miles in the dark. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Truth, stripped of filters. The story updated the next morning. More evidence emerges in Camille Conrad fraud case. Sources say husband provided full report. I didn't name-drop Tristan, but the article made clear there was another man involved. The court documents confirmed it, as did the furniture invoices. His name was on everything Camille had tried to make beautiful. And then he disappeared. Tristan Hale deleted his real estate Instagram. His business site went down. His number stopped working. Mutual Connections reported he left town. Ghosted her completely. No statement. No support. He was a shadow. A man who walked out the second the spotlight turned cold. Camille had always said she liked men who were ambitious. Turns out ambition doesn't mean loyalty. Her bail was set high, thanks to the size of the fraud and the risk of flight. She didn't post it. She couldn't. Her accounts had been frozen, and whatever money she had stashed was being tracked by the DA. I didn't rejoice when I heard. I didn't cheer. But I slept better that night than I had in weeks. I sat by the window with a cup of chamomile tea, her favorite. The house was dark, still, free of curated playlists or diffusers. No soft jazz. No eucalyptus mist. Just quiet. Honest quiet. It hit me then. She wasn't coming back. Not the woman I knew. Not the version I once loved. That version had collapsed under the weight of her ambition, crushed by her need for performance. All that was left now was a record, public and permanent. I was still reeling, of course. I'd open drawers and find receipts with her cursive, notes she left me in lunch bags from years ago, photos taped to old boxes. Ghosts lived here. But the difference now was this. I wasn't holding my breath anymore. The phone rang once that week. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. Miles, it's me, please. I know I don't deserve it. But if you could just call me back, all right. I need to hear from you. I just need to know you're still. I deleted it. Because I wasn't. Not the man she knew. Not the man she used. And certainly not the man she could keep writing into her script. It started with the smallest things, calls to the credit bureaus, passwords changed, fraud alerts activated. The aftermath wasn't cinematic. No dramatic music. No final confrontation. Just long hours on hold, one hand gripping a pen, the other rubbing my temple as if I could massage away the wreckage Camille left behind. My name had been wrapped around so many falsehoods, it felt like I was borrowing my own identity. Rebuilding wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what should have never been hers to touch. The first time I pulled my credit report post-arrest, I couldn't even look at the numbers. I focused on the flags. Closed accounts. Suspicious activity. A Macy's credit card I never opened. An auto loan inquiry from a dealership in Bellevue. She'd used me like a skeleton key, unlocking whatever luxury door she needed. And all I got was the debt. I hired a financial attorney, Darren E. Calm guy, shaved head, always wore the same navy jacket like it was a uniform. He didn't blink when I showed him the forged mortgage paperwork or the list of accounts tied to my name. This is going to take months, he warned me. Maybe longer. You need to be patient. And aggressive. That became my new contradiction, patient and aggressive. Calm, but relentless. I called. I faxed. I emailed. I submitted affidavit after affidavit, proof that I was the real Miles Conrad, and that someone who once shared my bed had built an empire of lies on my signature. The banks were slow. The process humiliating. I had to explain myself over and over to people who didn't know me and didn't care. You're saying your wife did this? One creditor asked, clearly skeptical. No. I'm saying a criminal did this, I replied. There were days I wanted to scream. Days I stared at the ceiling and wondered how many pieces of me were still missing. Camille had rewritten my credit profile, my marriage, my future. But what she couldn't rewrite was how I responded now. I refused to vanish inside the damage. I moved out of the apartment we once shared and into a small rental by the lake. It wasn't fancy. The walls echoed a little too much, and the refrigerator hummed like it had a secret to keep. But it was mine. No photos of us on the mantel. No curated throw pillows. Just clean space, quiet space. A place I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. The landlord, Mr. Jensen, was an older man who didn't ask too many questions. He liked that I paid on time. Liked that I kept to myself. He noticed my silence and nodded like he understood it. I started therapy on a Tuesday. I picked a female therapist, Dr. Maren Langley, because I didn't trust charm anymore. I needed honesty. Structure. Maren asked questions I wasn't ready for. "What did Camille make you feel that you miss?" she asked in the second session. I flinched. "I miss believing someone saw me," I said. "Not used me. Not performed beside me. Saw me." We sat in silence for a long time after that. Gardening came next. Not on purpose. My rental had this neglected backyard, overgrown grass, angry-looking shrubs, a sad little patch of soil boxed in by rotting wood. I pulled weeds just to kill time. Then one day I planted basil, then tomatoes. I didn't know what I was doing, but something about nurturing something honest from the dirt felt healing. I wasn't fixing the past. I was growing something new beside it. Camille wrote me from jail. 6 letters, all handwritten, all with that looping cursive she used to sign birthday cards. The first one was remorseful. The second was defensive. The third blamed her parents. The fourth was poetic, quoted Sylvia Plath. The fifth asked if I still loved her. The sixth didn't ask anything at all. Just described a dream she had where we were back in Italy, laughing over cheap wine in a plaza at sunset. I didn't open the sixth one. I just recognized her handwriting and dropped it into a drawer with the others. I didn't burn them. I didn't throw them away. But I didn't write back either. Forgiveness doesn't come in envelopes. There was a day, late spring, when I walked into a coffee shop near the rental, just needing a change of scenery. A barista named Lena took my order. She had sharp eyes and a quiet voice, didn't flirt, didn't perform. She just asked how I liked my espresso, and when I said strong and simple, she said, "Like all good things should be." I smiled. I left a tip. That was it. But it reminded me that the world didn't end, that not every interaction came with an agenda. That trust wasn't dead, just dormant. I stopped checking Camille's social media after that. I didn't care if she was still posting from behind bars or trying to spin a redemption arc. That wasn't my story anymore. I had learned to separate pain from identity. Her betrayal didn't define me, it exposed her. One evening, after finally getting confirmation that one of the fraudulent credit accounts had been fully removed from my report, I stood by the lake behind the rental and let the wind hit my face. There was something sacred in that moment, not triumphant, not proud, just intact. I wasn't fully healed. Some nights, I still jolted awake, heart racing, convinced I'd missed another piece of the mess. I kept all my personal documents in a locked cabinet now, birth certificate, passport, tax forms. I checked my credit score like it was a morning ritual. Hypervigilance had become habit. But slowly, boundaries became comfort. Silence became safety. I relearned the value of protecting myself, not with walls, but with intention. Camille never got another letter back. And if she ever called again, I wouldn't answer. Because she didn't just steal my name. She tried to erase my voice. And I spent every day now making sure it was mine again, louder, steadier, unshakable. I never thought I'd be someone who cared about light fixtures or door frames. I'd spent most of my adult life with the practical mindset of someone who measured value in utility, not in backsplash tile or crown molding. But there I was, standing in the entryway of a modest 2-bedroom home with my hand resting on the smooth, undecorated wall, and my heart beating like I'd stepped into a cathedral. This time, there was no folder full of fraud, no signatures etched without permission. The deed bore one name, mine. The mortgage, approved weeks after Camille's sentencing, was clean, hard-won. Cleared through layers of paperwork, explanations, and cautious lenders who didn't trust easily, not after seeing my credit history tangled up in a scandal. But I'd fought for it. I showed up for every appointment, answered every call, filled out every affidavit. I watched strangers behind desks squint at me like I was still half a suspect. And I waited, patiently, quietly. Then one Friday morning, my attorney called. "It's done," Darren said. "You're the legal owner." I didn't celebrate with champagne. I didn't tell anyone right away. I just drove out to the property 20 minutes outside Tacoma, tucked between maple trees and lake air, and stood in the doorway for a long time with the key in my palm. It felt heavier than it should have, not because of the metal, but because of the weight of every lie it undid. The front door opened with a satisfying click. No creak, no hesitation, just an invitation. The house wasn't big, but it didn't need to be. The living room had tall windows and good light. The kitchen counters were plain, laminate, not marble. The bathroom didn't have a spa tub or gold fixtures. The floors were wood, scuffed in places, warm beneath my feet. Real. Honest. Like they'd seen things and stayed solid anyway. The walls smelled faintly of fresh paint, pale eggshell white. A blank canvas. I walked through each room in silence, touching everything. Not because I was checking for damage, but because I could. No secrets waited in the corners. No notes hidden in drawers. No receipts for a future that didn't include me. Just space. Clean, imperfect, mine. The second bedroom would be my office. I'd already planned it in my head. Bookshelves along the back wall. A small desk by the window. Maybe a reading chair if I ever slowed down enough to sit in one. The master bedroom was quiet, bright in the mornings. I could already see the kind of bedding I wanted. Simple. No floral patterns. No curated textures to impress guests. Just soft sheets, a thick comforter, and peace. I didn't move in immediately. First, I brought a single folding chair and sat in the living room every evening for a week, just breathing it in. Listening to the house settle. No ghosts here. No echoes of betrayal. Just quiet that didn't demand anything from me. It felt like recalibrating. The second week, I brought in the essentials. Mattress, desk, my laptop, a kettle, a ceramic mug I'd bought from a roadside vendor on a trip years ago. Camille hated it. Said it was too handmade. I loved the imperfections. The slight bend in the rim, the way the glaze dripped like it was still in motion. It fit in this house in a way it never did in the one we shared. One afternoon, I opened a small cardboard box labeled Kept. It was the only one that held anything from the past. Inside, a few books, a framed photo of my parents, my college ID, a chipped keychain from the road trip Camille and I once took to Big Sur. I held it for a moment, rolled it between my fingers, then placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about putting it where it belonged. Camille hadn't written again. Not since the last envelope. Maybe the silence meant she finally understood. Maybe she didn't. I didn't care. Her name was no longer tangled in my finances, my mail, or my daydreams. She was noise I no longer heard. I started to decorate in quiet, deliberate ways. I hung up a print of a mountain range over the mantel, not for anyone else to see, but because I liked the weight of it. I bought plants. Not the air-purifying Instagram kind, just hardy, stubborn greenery that didn't die if you forgot to water them for a day. I found a record player at a flea market and brought it home like treasure. Music filled the corners of the rooms gently, like warmth. One day, while hauling in a second-hand dresser, the neighbor across the street waved. Her name was June. 70s, sharp eyes, smelled like lavender and cinnamon every time she came by. She brought over banana bread in a foil-wrapped loaf and said, "I'm glad it's you who bought this place." The last guy who toured it kept asking where to hang the TV. Didn't ask about the fireplace once. We sat on my porch and ate banana bread in silence. It was the most comfortable conversation I'd had with someone in months. "Lived through something hard, didn't you?" she asked finally. I nodded. "Still standing," she said. "Good sign." A week later, I planted tulips in the front yard. My credit was still recovering. Some scars don't vanish completely. They just fade enough that you stop flinching. I still kept everything under lock and key. Digital vaults, hard drives, paper documents stored in a fireproof box. I wasn't paranoid. I was aware. And that awareness felt like armor, not fear. Therapy continued every other Tuesday. Dr. Langley noticed I stopped talking about Camille and started talking about myself, my hopes, my goals, what I wanted to build from here. She smiled once during a session and said, "This is the first time you've used the word home without wincing." I hadn't realized it, but it was true. I started cooking again. Not fancy meals, nothing that involved soufflés or the kind of plating Camille once obsessed over. Just roasted vegetables, rice, grilled chicken. Food that filled the room with the scent of something solid. I cooked barefoot. I played records. I danced, badly, once, in the middle of my kitchen, laughing at nothing. This was healing, I realized, not in big declarations, but in the small rituals. making coffee slowly, sitting on the porch just to feel the wind, leaving the door open on cool mornings so the air could wander in. I'd bought a house with my name, my decision. No forged lines, no silent deals, just me. One afternoon, I stood in the hallway, staring at the light filtering through the living room windows. I thought about Highland Ridge, about its marble floors, its curated spaces, its mirrored lies. I thought about how Camille staged her future with someone else and how I'd once envied the perfection she painted. But this was better. This house didn't sparkle. It breathed. No betrayal in the baseboards. No guilt in the shadows. Just a man and the peace he fought for. That night, as I lay in bed with the window cracked open, I listened to the sound of wind brushing through trees and an owl calling somewhere in the dark. I pulled the blanket up to my chest and let myself smile. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And this house, the real one, wasn't just a place. It was a beginning. Camille served 15 months. 15 months of orange jumpsuits, shared bunks, and fluorescent lights. 15 months that passed slower for her than they did for me. Because while she sat in a cinderblock cell, clinging to whatever version of the truth she still told herself, I was outside building something real. I didn't follow her trial after the sentencing. Didn't read the interviews or the online speculation. I knew the facts. I lived them. I didn't need to relive them. When she was released, it happened quietly. No press this time. No tears online. Just a line in the court record, a process signature, and a gate that opened at 6 a.m. I got a text from Ramirez a week later. She's out. No contact order still stands. Just an FYI. That was all I needed. Camille moved in with her mother, according to the public records. Naomi had cut her off. Tristan was long gone. Her real estate license was suspended indefinitely. And her rebranding attempts, under a new name, new profile, new tagline, barely scratched traction. I heard she applied to a marketing agency in Spokane. I didn't care if she got the job or not. That was no longer my world. She wasn't someone I tracked. She was just background noise now. People sometimes ask me what she stole. The obvious answers come quickly. My credit, my name, my stability. But it was more than that. She stole time. Trust. The version of myself that believed love was enough to hold a foundation steady. She took my silence and wore it like a mask, convincing the world we were fine while she built an escape route. She didn't just use my signature, she used my stillness. But what I took back, that's the part no one talks about enough. I took back my voice. Not the performative kind. The real one. The one that learned how to say no without apology. The one that didn't need to explain or over-justify. The one that knew boundaries weren't a weakness, they were protection. I took back my sense of direction. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't reacting to someone else's chaos. I was making decisions on my own terms. Where to live, what to own, who to trust. I no longer looked over my shoulder or second-guessed my gut. My instincts had been right all along. I'd just been taught to ignore them. I took back my time. The days I once spent double-checking Camille's stories, scrolling through her Instagram to decode where she really was, pretending not to feel the drift, I now spent planting herbs, brewing coffee, fixing creaky door hinges. Mundane things, maybe, but they were mine. No pretense, no performance. Just life, quietly lived. I even took back hope. The fragile kind, the one that grows slowly and without guarantee. I found it in the way my house smelled like pine in the mornings. In the sound of my neighbor's wind chimes. In the way my therapist smiled when I told her, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I hadn't planned to visit the Highland Ridge property again. I didn't need closure from it. But one afternoon, I drove past it, just once. Out of curiosity. The for sale sign was still up. The windows were bare. The lights were off. Cold and hollow and staged again, like a performance waiting for its next audience. But it didn't sting anymore. It felt distant, like an old photo I didn't recognize myself in. As I turned off the road and headed back toward the home I chose, the one without lies in the walls, I realized something important. Camille had been the storm, but I had been the anchor. Quiet, steady, waiting. And now? Now, I'd let the storm pass. I wasn't the man she left behind. I was the man she underestimated. And in every small decision I made now, in every real key I held, every night I slept without a knot in my chest, I was taking back more than she ever thought to steal.